All right, so move on to the next segment. I'll be sharing my thoughts on the Miami Heat as they head into the NBA offseason. What should the Miami Heat do this NBA offseason to stay afloat in the Eastern Conference? So a lot of questions will be answered in the Eastern Conference for the Miami Heat this NBA offseason. And here's my thoughts on this. As a Miami Heat fan, we have been spoiled over the years for wanting championship hardware in South Beach in Miami. We have had 3 NBA titles since 2006. And I lived through the Big 3 era of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. I had this decade, or over the last decade or so, and the Jimmy Butler run was very special in Miami as well, even though we didn't win a championship. But ever since then, we have been a part of the last 4 NBA play-in tournaments in the Eastern Conference. Something needs to change because we got to get out of the play-in tournament vortex if you ever want to be a true contending team in the Eastern Conference again. Now, for the offseason, the Miami Heat got to hit on a first-round pick. If you don't hit on your first-round pick, this could be a world of trouble for the overall roster moving forward. Because since we lost the first play-in tournament game to the Charlotte Hornets, we now have a NBA lottery pick. And the Miami Heat have a 4% chance of earning a top 4 pick in the NBA draft. And anything is possible because the Dallas Mavericks had a 1% chance of getting the first overall pick last summer for the NBA draft. They earned the number 1 overall pick and drafted Cooper Flagg from Duke after trading away Luka Doncic. So anything is possible. But the Miami Heat, if we get a mid-round lottery pick, we got to hit on the selection. And we have done that, hitting on mid-round selections over the last couple years. You drafted your superstars mid-round selections like Tyler Hero from Kentucky, Bam Adebayo from Kentucky. The rest of the mid-round selections have been good. Don't get me wrong, in the last recent years, they're good overall players, but don't have a long-term plan with the franchise moving forward. Or I can't consider them to be superstars down the line for the Miami Heat. So we definitely got to hit on this draft pick. And what the Miami Heat needs from the NBA draft, this could be the best player you get realistically in the NBA offseason if things don't go your way. So you need a player with shot creation and could be an interior depth player for the Miami Heat moving forward. So you can that player can contribute to wins and help us become a contending team in the Eastern Conference again. And another big assignment for the Miami Heat, they got to figure out how to get over the hump in the Eastern Conference. Now, you got to get out of the play-in tournament vortex, like I just said. Do you run it back with this roster with potentially a big lottery pick? And that's a big question for the Miami Heat moving forward. Do you re-sign Norman Powell? I like Norman Powell. I think he's a good third scoring option behind Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. But Norman Powell is said to be an unrestricted free agent. And he was an all-star for the Miami Heat this year. But the long-term plans, it could be good for us to keep him. But the problem is he's already 33, and he has a trend of missing post-All-Star games due to post-All-Star injuries over the last couple of years. It happened with the Los Angeles Clippers. It happened with the Miami Heat. So that's something to pay attention to moving forward if the Miami Heat re-sign Norman Powell to a long-term deal. And I would like to see the Miami Heat opt into Andrew Wiggins' contract rather than letting him walk as an unrestricted free agent for NBA free agency. Then you got to trade. You got to make a splash this summer. You got to trade for the following 3 players that could be available for the Miami Heat. I'm looking at Giannis. That relationship between Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks, it's a divorce. The divorce papers have already been filed. Giannis does not want to be there anymore. The Bucks are ready to move on. Let's try to trade for Giannis. Let's try to trade for possibly John Morant. I would take a swing on John Morant to be the franchise player for the Miami Heat moving forward. What can you lose at this point? Or possibly Donovan Mitchell. I would pay attention to that if the Cleveland Cavaliers would make Donovan Mitchell available if they have a postseason run that they're not proud of. They could possibly put their star player on the market if they get bounced in the first round against the Raptors. So the Miami Heat need to go after a star this NBA offseason. And the Heat, they have a good overall roster, but without a true number 1 scoring option or a star, you're not going to get over the hump in the Eastern Conference. You're not going to contend with the top tier teams like the Detroit Pistons, the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks, or the Cleveland Cavaliers over the next couple years in the Eastern Conference. So everyone but Bam Adebayo should honestly be available for a trade, in my opinion. Everybody but Bam should be available for a trade. And you got a high first-round pick to play with now. So you could possibly put that in a trade, Tyler Hero in a trade, or you could build around players or rotation players for this trade. So even if the Heat trade for a player or a superstar this summer, then the question becomes, do you still have the roster or the resources to still be a competitive team in the Eastern Conference. Because then, if you get Giannis and Bam, then you still have the pieces to compete in the Eastern Conference. Because you could give up a lot to get a star player like that. Same with John Morant. Same with Donovan Mitchell. So that's where Pat Riley and the rest of the Miami Heat executives got to do their job for the NBA offseason to make sure they build this roster around to make sure we avoid the play-in tournament. We're contenders in the Eastern Conference again. And can you hang with the Pistons, the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Cavs, and possibly the Raptors in a 7-game series move forward? Plus, the Indiana Pacers are going to get better. They're going to get Tyrese Halliburton back next year. They'll have a lottery pick, possibly a top 5 pick. So the East is only going to get better. So it's the Miami Heat's job to get better this offseason and prepare to contend with those top-tier teams in the Eastern Conference. But those are my thoughts on what the Miami Heat should do this NBA offseason.